"This isn't a marriage, Dad, it's a sentence." Isabella's voice shook even when she tried to keep it steady. Ademar didn't look her in the eyes. His head was down, his shoulders were heavy, as if his own guilt was crushing him. But that didn't stop him from handing over his daughter as payment for the debt. "I had no choice, daughter," he murmured, unable to hold his gaze. Isabella wanted to scream, run, disappear. But there wasn't time. The black car parked in front of the simple house, and the driver got out without saying a word. He opened the back door. Inside, in the shadow of the tinted windows, was Dante Ferraz. He descended like someone stepping on soil that already belongs to him. Tall, with an overwhelming presence, his icy eyes fixed on her as if he already knew exactly what to do with every part of her body. The tailored suit hugged his athletic build, but the first button of the shirt was open, leaving part of his defined, tanned chest visible. It wasn't carelessness. It was dominance. "Come, Isabella," he said, without a hint of sweetness. She didn't move a muscle. His heart was pounding so hard it was like it was trying to come out of his neck. But his father, desperate, grabbed his arm. "It will be better than you imagine. He promised to take care of you." Dante approached. The woody and refined perfume arrived before the touch. Isabella felt her skin crawl. It was something between fear and curiosity. "I promise, yes, to care, shape, make you mine." The voice was low, hoarse, as if he was savoring every word. On the way to the mansion, inside the car, the silence was piercing. Isabella looked out the window but felt his gaze burning her skin. The leather seat, the citrus-scented air conditioning, the tension in the air. Every detail screamed that his life had changed. When she arrived, she barely had time to breathe. Suitcases packed in the room, clothes chosen by him. Nothing that was yours was there. Nothing was hers. At dinner, the table was abundant. He sat on the edge, and she on the other side. He didn't exchange a word during the meal, but he watched her as if he was studying a rare piece. His eyes roamed over her lap, her mouth, her bare shoulders. "You don't need to pretend you're comfortable," he said with a crooked smile. "Nor do I intend to pretend that I am an easy man to love." Isabella faced him for the first time, defiant, even though inside she was shaking. "Love isn't part of that, is it?" He laughed, a serious, enveloping sound. "Not yet." That night, she slept in a room next to his. The bed was too soft. The sheets smelled like lavender, but sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the way he looked at her, as you said your name, as if he possessed her before he even touched her. And in the silence of the early morning, the door between the rooms opened. No rush. Noiseless. Just Dante's shadow standing in the doorway, watching her. Her heart raced. The body stiffened. He didn't go in, I just said, "You are the only debt that I insist on paying with pleasure." And the door closed again, but the air was no longer the same. The next morning, Isabella woke up with her body tense. The sun invaded the room as if nothing had happened, but she knew there was something different about herself. A hot discomfort, as if your skin had been marked without touch. He put on the robe he had found on the armchair. It was black satin, smooth, too thin to hide any curves. He slowly descended the stairs of the silent mansion, trying to orient himself in that cold and luxurious environment that seemed like captivity in disguise. In the living room, Dante was waiting for her. He was without a suit now, wearing only a half-open white shirt and tailored pants that shaped his strong thighs. His bare chest, partially visible, showed a light scar near his collarbone, and his muscles were tense, ready. He took a sip of coffee and looked her up and down, the corner of his mouth slowly turning up. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, without hiding the double meaning. Isabella didn't respond. She walked to the table, feeling the fabric of the robe slip between her thighs, trying to keep her chin up even with his eyes weighing on her breasts, covered only by that thin cloth. "Get dressed. Let's go out," he said, sliding a velvet box across the table. She hesitated before opening it. Inside, a red silk dress, tight, low-cut, strapless, and a pair of lace panties in the same color. "Is this a whim or a uniform?" She quipped, "That's what pleases me." he replied, approaching slowly, "and you will learn to enjoy pleasing me." He stood before her, just a few centimeters. The heat of their bodies mixed together. Isabella could smell his skin, woodsy, clean, virile. His gaze slowly moved down to her feet, up her bare legs, focused on the swell beneath the fabric over her breasts. "Do you know what it does to me?" he murmured. The deep voice vibrated the air between them. "I could undress you right here, and you would let me." She swallowed hard, heart racing, breathing short. "Do you really think you have that power?" Dante then brushed his hand along her hip, just his fingers, as if tracing a map on her skin. The touch was light, but Isabella's every nerve lit up like a spark. "It's not a question of power, Isabella. It's a matter of desire, yours and mine." She couldn't move, the body betrayed pride. Her breasts rose beneath the fabric. Goosebumps. The eyes locked on his. He pulled away slowly, as if cutting the invisible thread that connected them. "Get dressed. I'll be waiting in the car." Isabella stayed there for seconds, trying to understand how a simple touch, a simple look, had broken down her defenses, and for the first time, she wondered if the greater danger was being his, or wanting to be. The car glided through the city streets in silence, with the windows closed and the air conditioning filling the environment with an expensive, citrus and woody perfume. Isabella kept her eyes fixed on the landscape, but she felt Dante's gaze burning her exposed skin. The red dress covered her body like a second skin. Strapless, it left her shoulders and a large part of her breasts exposed. The lace on the panties was too thin to be forgotten. "Are you uncomfortable?" he asked, his voice low, too close. "I'm dressed like a costume," she replied without looking at him. "Fantasies. Sometimes they become addictions." Dante laughed lightly, and the sound was wickedly sweet. "And you still haven't seen half of what I want with you." The restaurant was exclusive, silent, where everyone seemed to belong to a world of appearances and contracts. But when she walked through the door next to Dante, everyone looked. The dress, the firm walk, the contrast between her innocence and the dark presence of the man next to her. It was impossible to ignore. At the table, he ordered wine. He watched, her every gesture like someone anticipating the outcome of a play. "You look beautiful, but it still behaves as if it weren't. Maybe because I still don't feel I'm yours." He leaned over the table, the eyes on hers, the firm but engaging tone. "But you already are, even if you haven't allowed yourself yet." The wine glass in his hand seemed smaller between his large, strong fingers. The way he held it, the way he brushed his lip against the crystal before drinking, was almost indecent. Isabella felt her own body react. Her thighs pressed together under the table, her breathing shorter, the heat under her dress. On the way back, he told the driver to take a longer ride. The silence in the back seat was charged. Dante moved closer, sliding his hand behind her neck, his thumb lightly brushing the sensitive skin behind her ear. "Why are you shaking?" he whispered. "Because I should hate you, but I can't." Dante pulled her face close, taking his time. Warm breath touched his lips. He hasn't kissed her yet. The tension was so intense it hurt. "Do you know what drives me crazy about you, Isabella? That's your fear. He has taste, and I want to savor it until the end." When their lips touched, there was no softness. It was a hungry kiss, as if months had been condensed into that single contact. His tongue invaded her mouth without asking permission, and hers gave in, enveloped, responded. His hand moved down her thigh, found the edge of the lace. Fingers slid inside just enough to feel the heat, the wetness. She gasped, the back arched. The dress became useless. "That's wrong," she murmured, almost voiceless. "And that's why you can't stop." The car stopped. He came out first, composed, cool as ever. He extended his hand. "Come." And she came. The sound of Isabella's heels echoed across the polished marble of the main hall as she climbed the steps after Dante. His heart was still racing. His body was hot, as if the electricity from that kiss was still pulsing beneath his skin. Every step he took forward felt like a non-verbal invitation. When they reached the bedroom hallway, he stopped. He turned around slowly. The face, illuminated by the low light, reflected something new. It wasn't just desire. It was absolute control. "Come into my room," he said in a deep voice without raising his tone. She hesitated, but not out of fear. There was something about her skin that cried out for more. Her breasts were still sensitive under her dress. Her panties stuck to her body, damp. His scent still on your lips. Entered. The room was large with huge windows. When she turned to him, he was already taking off his shirt. The chest is wide, defined with discreet hair going down to the trouser line. His rigid abdomen contracted with each breath. He still didn't touch her. He just watched her as if he were taking off her clothes with his eyes. "Take off your dress," he ordered. But his voice sounded like a forbidden request. Isabella kept her eyes on him as she slid the straps off her shoulders. The silk slid slowly, revealing goosebumps, firm breasts, tight belly. She was left with just her panties. Dante approached. The heat from his body reached hers before he even touched her. He ran his fingers around her waist, slowly going down, the sides of her hips. His firm hand gripped the back of her thigh and pulled her body against his. She felt his hardness through the fabric. "Do you have any idea what causes it?" he whispered in her ear, his breath hot and wet. He slid his lips down her neck, nibbling lightly, until he reached her collarbone. The hand moved up her back, then firmly down to her coccyx. His fingers pressed into the delicate skin. She moaned softly. The legs lost strength. He lifted her into his arms as if she were weightless and placed her on the bed effortlessly. The cold sheet contrasted with the heat that burned between her thighs. He knelt over her, slowly taking off his own pants. The sight of his naked body made her catch her breath. Strong, masculine, in every detail. He descended on her like someone claiming territory. His lips took hers again. The tongue explored with precision, with hunger, with dominance. His hands went to meet her breasts, massaging with controlled pressure, while his mouth went down, sucking the nipple with intensity. She arched her back, her fingers digging into his shoulders. The smell of skin, light sweat, and desire, the texture of the sheets against your skin, the muffled moans, the sound of his breathing quickening. When he slid in, she gasped loudly. The bodies fit together, as if they had always belonged together. And there, between the firm and rhythmic movements, she realized there was no turning back. The morning arrived, enveloped in a thick silence. Isabella woke up with the sheet slowly slipping off her naked body, revealing skin marked by still recent touches. The air in the room carried his scent, woodsy, masculine, domineering. It was as if Dante was still there, even after leaving his bed before dawn. She ran her hand over her belly, where the memory of his movements still pulsed. Her sensitive breasts reacted to the slightest brush against the soft cotton, while her thighs still revealed the intensity of the previous night. But along with the heat came the weight of reality. She had given herself away, in body, and perhaps worse in will. When he entered the bathroom, he found one of his shirts hanging, as if left there on purpose. It was white, long, and still warm from his body. Wearing it was like enveloping him once again. She felt the fabric touch her still hard nipples, and the fabric molded to the curve of her hips. He went down the stairs slowly, without rushing. In the kitchen, Dante was on his back making coffee, with only his pajama bottoms low enough to reveal the firm line of his back to his hips. His back muscles moved smoothly as he moved the spoon. Isabella stopped on the doorstep, observing in silence. He seemed calm, in control. But she knew, behind that rigidity there was something pulsing, something as disorganized as what she felt now. He slowly turned around and smiled when he saw her with his shirt on. His gaze roamed his body shamelessly. "It looks better on you than on me." She approached. Her bare feet made the cold ground, contrast with the heat between her legs. When she got close, he held her waist firmly, placing her against the counter. "The touch is firm but controlled. Do you have any idea what you did to me yesterday?" he murmured. She ran her fingers over his abdomen, feeling the firmness of the skin against her palm. The smell of coffee mixed with his perfume formed a hypnotic combination. "And you, do you have any idea what you did to me?" she replied, her eyes locked on his. Dante kissed her. Slowly at first, then more intense. His hand slid beneath your shirt, finding the heat between your thighs, where his fingers slid familiarly. She bit her lip, arched her hips. "This isn't love yet, Isabella," he whispered as his mouth went down her neck. "But it will be impossible to forget me." She felt it too. The danger wasn't just in his body, but in what he was starting to provoke inside. The fear was no longer of being possessed. It was like I didn't want to leave there anymore, and he knew it. That's why he smiled like that. Dante pressed her against the cold marble counter. The contrast between the icy surface and the heat of his body raised goosebumps on Isabella's skin, making her gasp before he even touched her again. The shirt she was wearing rose slowly with the movement of his body, revealing the naked curves. He already knew with almost cruel precision. "You're getting addicted," he murmured in her ear, his hot breath making the hairs on her neck stand on end. "Maybe it is," she replied without shame. The voice was low but firm. He slid his hand behind her thighs, lifting her onto the counter with ease. The fingers ran along the skin on the inside of her legs, slowly moving up, until they found the warm, wet entrance. His eyes lit up at the touch, "Always ready for me," he teased, massaging the exact spot with his thumb, taking his time. Isabella held his shoulder tightly, her nails curving over the firm skin. He continued to tease her with his fingers, but his eyes were fixed on hers. It was more than desire, it was dominance. "I still don't know if I love you or hate you," she confessed between sighs and shivers. "I don't need your love, Isabella." He slid his fingers inside firmly. "Just your body giving itself away like that," she moaned. Loudly, the internal muscles reacted to touch with voluptuousness. Her breasts rose and fell with each panting breath. Her shirt was already open on her chest, hanging loosely over her shoulders. Her hard pink nipples begged for more. Dante bent down, taking one of them in his mouth, sucking with alternating precision and force. The tongue swirled. The wet sound of sucking filled the room along with the discreet clink of the spoon in the coffee still on the table. She arched, digging her heels into the small of his back, pulling him closer. His member, rigid under his pants, rubbed against her belly, teasing them both. On impulse, she tugged at the waistband of his pants, causing the fabric to slide down his hips and fall. He picked her up again, carrying her to the nearest sofa. He laid her on her back, climbed on top of her, his skin pressing against hers, hot, alive, urgent. The penetration came firm, intense, with a muffled moan between kisses. Isabella bit his shoulder, her eyes rolling back with the pleasure that rose in waves. He moved her like someone who already knew every point of pleasure, every limit of resistance, exploring everything without retreat. The bodies collided in a constant rhythm, sweaty, wet, intense, vision blurred, senses on alert. The smell, the sound, the taste of his mouth, his touch, everything pulsed. In the end, he fell beside her, still panting, pulling her close, his arm firmly under her neck, the other over her stomach, now covered in a thin layer of sweat. "You're messing me up inside, Isabella," he confessed, the hoarse voice without armor, and she understood. Something was changing. Inside it. And maybe inside her too. But the desire still burned stronger than any doubt. Isabella walked around the room with slow steps, her body still sensitive from the night they had shared, or rather, from the nights. Because it wasn't just one anymore. That game between them had been repeating itself, intensifying, becoming more difficult to control. She was naked, except for a thin, almost transparent nightgown that he had left on the bed the night before. The fabric clung to her braless breasts, leaving her nipples visibly hard. Her bare hips peeked out from under the slight side slit that went up to her crotch. The sensation was ambiguous. It provoked shame and power at the same time. Dante entered the room without knocking. The gaze went straight to her. "Are you dressing for me or against me?" he asked, his intense gaze covering every detail. She turned around slowly, without backing down. The game was already on another level. She had learned not to look away. "Maybe I'm starting to understand what teasing is." He smiled, approaching like a controlled storm. He only wore sweatpants low on his hips, the bare, tanned chest, the scratched abdomen, the burning gaze. Be careful what you provoke. You may not be ready for the consequences. And you are. The answer was a kiss, fierce. He pushed her against the wall, his body pressing against hers, leaving no room for anything but touch. The hands held his face, while the mouth invaded, tasted, devoured. She moaned against his lips, her breasts pressing against his bare chest, her legs instinctively parted. Her nightgown rode up with ease, her hips pressed against the icy wall, her skin throbbing with excitement. He trailed kisses down to her neck, biting the delicate skin below her ear, then her shoulders, then her collarbone. One of his arms held her around the waist firmly, the other went down between her thighs. "Already so wet," he whispered with a deep laugh, his fingers leading the way. She grabbed his hair, pulling hard. Breathing heavily, skin too hot. "You leave me like this, you drive me crazy." He knelt in front of her, his mouth glued between her legs, his tongue exploring with precision the spot that made her tremble. She screamed softly, trying to contain her body that was already shaking, the legs weakened. He picked her up once again and threw her on the bed, entering on top with strength and desire. The bodies collided. The wet sound of movements echoed in the silent room. "Look at me," he demanded. She looked at him. Her eyes were teary, her face was flushed, her lips were parted. The pleasure was so intense it hurt. When he reached his peak, she arched beneath him, her back lifted, her muscles contracting, her breasts trembling. Dante watched her as if he had won. But deep down, she knew. He was the one who was dominated, now. And as much as her body screamed for more, her heart was starting to whisper that it had a price. Isabella woke up with her head resting on Dante's bare chest. The sound of his heart beat strong, rhythmic, as if it still echoed the intensity of the previous night. Your fingers drew slow circles on his skin, feeling the firm texture of his muscles, the warm heat that exuded from every pore. It was strange how much that body, which had once scared her, now seemed to be the only place where she felt alive. Dante was still sleeping, his jaw clenched, his dark lashes resting on his golden skin, his heavy arm wrapped possessively around her waist, as if even in a dream he wanted to leave her trapped. She moved slowly, sliding off the bed, the body still, hurt between the legs, marked in areas that no one had ever touched. She walked naked to the mirror and looked at herself. The breasts were slightly red, sensitive. The curve of her back showed marks from his fingers. The trembling thighs revealed how intense the last morning had been. But what caught his attention most was the sparkle in his own eyes. It wasn't just pleasure, it was confusion. It was delivery. "Do you like what you see?" His voice sounded hoarse, still filled with sleep. She turned around slowly, still naked, without hiding her body. He was leaning against the headboard, the sheets below his waist, his hard abdomen exposed, his gaze devouring every part of her as if he were still hungry. "I don't know if I like it, but I know I can't run away anymore." He extended his hand. She went. She lay on top of him, her hips fitting into his, her hands resting on his chest. He caressed her back slowly, his fingertips tracing the path from the back of her neck to the base of her spine. "Your body speaks to me, even when your mouth says nothing. And your body holds me," she whispered. He held her hips and made her sit on him slowly. She felt the hardened volume touch her intimacy and gasped. He closed his eyes. She slid over him, taking her time, feeling every inch, every pulse. The entire body vibrated. Her breasts swayed subtly with the movement, her hardened nipples reacting to the friction with his chest. Dante looked at her as if observing a rare work. He supported himself on his hips, guiding his movements firmly. His mouth found her breasts, then her neck, then her lips. "I should get away from you," she whispered, her eyes teary even in ecstasy. "Then why do you keep coming back?" he asked, lightly biting your chin. Isabella dug her nails into his chest, the orgasm coming like an overwhelming wave. He moaned loudly, throwing his head back, his hair sticking to his sweaty back. Dante held her tightly, following her. his entire body contracting beneath hers. When everything stopped, silence fell between them. She collapsed into his arms, her chest heaving, her heart pounding, and for a moment, there was no fear, no hate. Just two bodies that already knew each other more than they should. But deep down, she knew. Something bigger was about to happen. And it wouldn't just be physical. Isabella's body was still vibrating, even wrapped in Dante's arms, even with the sweat slowly drying on her skin, even with her muscles relaxed. There was a restlessness throbbing in her belly, and it wasn't just the recent pleasure. He slid out of bed, wrapping himself in the sheet. Her feet touched the cold floor, and she headed to the bathroom, looking at her reflection in the mirror, once again. Her face was flushed, her lips were swollen from the intense kisses, her neck had visible marks from where his mouth had explored voraciously, but there was something more there. Her cycle was late. Too many days. The thought came like dizziness. The belly that still seemed to feel his presence, was it now carrying something else? He placed his hand on his lower abdomen. The skin was warm, tight. He felt a shiver go up his spine. The idea invaded her with force and at the same time with fear. He took a deep breath, trying to push away the whirlwind, but it was too late. That possibility was already permeated in every pore. He went back to the room, trying to hide it. Dante was leaning back, looking at his cell phone, naked from the waist up, his abdomen covered only halfway by a messy sheet. Her eyes looked up as she entered. "It's different," he commented directly. She forced a smile. "Maybe because today I finally saw everything more clearly." "What did you see?" "That the most dangerous prison is the one we learn to love." He smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. "And do you already love me, Isabella?" She approached slowly, the sheet slipping down her back, revealing her curves. She sat on him once again, naked, with her knees on either side of his body. Her hands ran over his broad chest, her nails tracing lines that left goosebumps on his skin. "I still don't know if it's love, or if it's madness. But I know it's real." He held the back of her head firmly and pulled her into a deep kiss. A slower kiss, but full of accumulated tension. His tongue was hot, purposeful, moving inside her mouth as if it were familiar territory. She gently moved down her body, placing her breasts against his abdomen, slowly kissing her way between the muscles. The smell of his skin, mixed with dry sweat, was addictive. Dante moaned softly when he felt her lips touch his hip. She teased him, exploring each part calmly, as if she wanted to memorize the details. He was completely surrendered. His eyes closed, his fingers digging into the mattress, but in the back of her mind, a single phrase echoed, cutting through the pleasure with an unknown fear. "What if I'm pregnant?" She climbed back up, straddling him once more. She felt him fill her, and her body responded with familiarity, but something had changed. The pleasure was still intense, the senses on alert, but there was a new layer there of vulnerability. As they moved together in almost painful harmony, she realized she was loving it. But I was also scared, because that man, who now made her lose her breath, could also be the same man who would leave her alone with much more than memories. "Dante," she whispered, breathing shakily. "He speaks. If we..." He hesitated, but didn't finish. He looked her in the eyes. For a moment, he seemed to have read everything, but he chose not to respond, and he just kept possessing, as if it was still just pleasure. But she knew. Now it was more. Isabella was sitting on the edge of the bed, the sheet covering only part of her thighs. The body was still throbbing. It wasn't just because of what they had just done, but because of what she felt now, trapped between two extremes that she never imagined living. Her breasts were still tender, with faint red marks from where Dante had taken them in his mouth, suckling with alternating hunger and adoration. Her belly, slightly swollen, seemed to whisper secrets. The mouth was still wet. The taste of him was still present, the echo of their moans mixed with the labored breathing that took a while to stabilize. He was in the bathroom. The water in the shower hit hard, drowning out the world around it. And she, alone naked, felt the weight of doubt. He got up slowly, walking to the mirror. The scarred skin told the story she didn't dare say out loud. It was delivered. More than the body, it was the soul that began to bow. But what if there was a life inside her now? The mere thought of being pregnant with Dante made her heart skip a beat. He remembered every touch, from when he kissed your inner thighs with your eyes closed, from when he penetrated her with strength and desire, murmuring her name as if it were a spell, from when he held her waist so firmly that he seemed afraid of losing her, and now there could be more. Dante came out of the bathroom. He only wore a low towel, which he tied to his hips out of sheer unwillingness. His wet hair dripping in drops. Over his broad shoulders, ran down his back and got lost in the lines of his defined chest. He saw her standing there, naked, vulnerable, and came closer. "Why are you like this?" "Like this?" "With eyes full of truth," he replied, touching her face with the back of his hand. She didn't respond. He just got closer, pressing his body against his. The breasts pressed against the wet chest, the belly sticking to the rigid abdomen. He grabbed the back of her head with one hand and her waist with the other, pulling her into a kiss. This time the kiss was slow, no urgency, as if he was trying to understand what she was hiding. Isabella took her hands to his towel, releasing it. She fell to the floor with a muffled whisper. He was ready again. His erect member. He laid her on the bed. His tongue ran over her breasts, biting slowly, then moved down, spreading her legs with his fingers and exploring every inch with precision. She moaned loudly, hands gripping the sheets, hips rising for more. Penetration came at a slow, deep pace. He looked into her eyes, their bodies pressed together, sweat dripping between them, the ragged breathing, the muffled moans, the eyes closed at times but always returning to each other. She came intensely, her entire body shaking, and he followed her seconds later, holding her tightly, as if he was depositing more than just pleasure inside her. When it all stopped, he lay on his side, his arm wrapping around her waist. She stared at the ceiling. This time, the silence wasn't just post-pleasure. It was full of unspoken questions, and for the first time, she knew she needed to find out for herself. What was growing inside her? Was it new life or a warning? The day dawned heavy, as if the sky knew something that she didn't yet have the courage to name. Isabella could no longer ignore the delay, the slight nausea that had started, the extreme sensitivity in her breasts, which were now pulsating even without his touch. The body gave signals, shouted what she was trying to silence. In the closet, he dressed slowly. She chose a light blouse, but the fabric clung to her hardened nipples, which protruded beneath her clothes like a silent confession. The touch of the cloth was an uncomfortable reminder that everything about her seemed amplified. Dante watched her from afar, leaning against the doorframe, his arms crossed over his bare chest, his gaze fixed on her gestures as if he were reading every thought behind her movements. "Are you hiding from me?" he asked, his voice low, firm. "No, I'm trying to find myself." She kept her eyes in the mirror without facing him directly. He approached her from behind, pressing his body to hers. His large hands grabbed her waist, pulling her close, making her feel his erection against her buttocks. His heat burned. "What is happening?" he insisted, placing his lips on the back of her neck, where he placed a slow, wet kiss. "Your body is telling me things you haven't said out loud yet." She turned around slowly, placing her hands on his chest. The texture of his skin beneath her fingers always made her vulnerable, but now it was different. It was as if every touch was a reminder of what he had planted in her, literally. "I need to leave today." "Alone," she said. Dante frowned. "Any special reason?" "I need some time, just that. You know I don't trust that kind of silence. It's not about trust. It's about me. I just need to breathe." He held her chin, slightly lifting her face. The touch was firm but not aggressive. His eyes searched for something beyond the surface. "If you're pregnant," he began. She froze. "I'll know, sooner or later," he added with an expression that mixed threat and concern. Isabella walked away, swallowing hard. The heart was beating hard. She got fully dressed, grabbed her bag and left, leaving behind not only the house but the suffocating heat of his presence. Hours later, sitting in a cold room, She held the pregnancy test in her hands. The positive was there, of course, indisputable. She smiled and cried. Finally, he placed his hand on his belly and whispered, "You are not a prison. It's my chance for freedom." But deep down, I knew that from that moment on, everything would change. It wasn't just between her and Dante anymore. Now there was a third link, and the most dangerous of all feelings was about to be born with this child. The love that bows to no one, not the beginning. Continue maintaining emotional depth, strong. Words following the structure we have already defined without losing connection with the previous part. And the story writing instructions, maintaining the average number of characters requested by the user. Describe bodily elements and highlight everything that involves sexuality and may be exciting to the audience. Describe parts of the body and sensual actions. Move the audience's imagination without exaggerating the poetic language. ChatGPT said, page 12, chapter 12. The body he will never have completely. Isabella returned home at dusk. His swollen eyes revealed his suppressed crying, but there was something new in his posture. She was no longer just the girl given over to the pleasure that Dante masterfully commanded. Now there was an instinctive animal force within her that no longer depended on his touch to exist. As he walked through the door, he saw Dante standing in the living room, tense, hands in the pockets of his dark dress pants. The white shirt, open on the chest, revealed part of his defined abdomen, still damp from a recent shower. His slightly messy hair gave him an even wilder look. "Where have you been?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. She didn't respond right away. She placed her bag on the table and slowly took off her shoes. The light dress she wore molded her every curve. Her breasts, fuller, seemed to pulsate beneath the fabric. The belly, now aware of its new tenant, seemed more present. And she knew exactly what caused just existing there like that. "I went to find out what you left in me," she said finally with a firm voice. Dante didn't react immediately. His eyes roamed her body, slowly moving up her legs, taking in the swell of her hips, the hard nipples beneath her thin dress, the wet glow in her eyes. "Are you telling me—" he began. "I'm pregnant," she interrupted, crossing her arms, with the posture of someone who no longer begs for approval. He approached slowly, like someone approaching something sacred and dangerous at the same time. He stopped in front of her, his eyes fixed on hers, his chest rising and falling with difficulty. "Is it mine?" She gave a short laugh. "Do you really think someone else touched me?" He touched her face, running his fingers from her jaw to her neck, as if searching in her heartbeat for some answer he didn't know how to hear. His eyes were watery, not with emotion but with pent-up tension. "I should get away," he muttered. "But now you belong to me even more." She gently but firmly removed his hands from his face. "What's in here?" He placed his hand on his stomach. "Doesn't belong to you. It's not about you anymore. It's about me, about who I'm going to be from this." Dante fell silent, but the desire in his eyes continued to burn. She felt it. And perhaps out of provocation, perhaps on impulse, she approached and pressed her lips to his in a kiss that wasn't asked for. It was dominance. The tongue invaded, explored, tasted, but did not surrender. His body responded immediately, his muscles contracting, his already erect member rubbing against her belly. She felt everything, every inch, every reaction. They went up the stairs without a word. She pushed him onto the bed, undressed him slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. Her fingers roamed his skin with hunger and anger. She straddled him with authority, her breasts swaying, her breathing already heavy, even before penetration. When he entered, she moaned loudly, riding with a firm, sensual, determined rhythm. Her eyes boring into his, her hands resting on his chest, her hips moving with dominance. "You don't command me anymore," he whispered through clenched teeth, and he, sweating, submissive to the pleasure, knew she was right. The body could give itself up, but her soul would never be his completely. Time passed like a breath between fingers. And when the baby's cries filled the cold corridors of that mansion that was once a prison, Isabella knew nothing would be the same again. She held him in her arms, a little life that pulsed with strength, heat, and promises. The boy had her eyes, but Dante's fixed and intense gaze, a reflection of both, and at the same time of no one else but himself. Dante was at the bedroom door, standing still, silent. Not a word had been spoken since birth. Just a look, filled with something he had never learned to verbalize. Fear, not the baby's, but what Isabella had become since he was conceived. She looked at him, her hair disheveled, her eyes tired but firm, the body still sore, still sensitive, but now untouchable. "He is your son," she said softly, "but his story will be written by me." Dante took a step forward, hesitated. The fingers trembled. That man who had once possessed her with so much dominance now trembled in the face of such a small being, and a woman who no longer needed him. "I want to be there," he said, his voice cracking. "I don't know how to be a father, but I want to try." Isabella took a deep breath. She got up with the baby in her arms and approached slowly. Trying starts with regret, responsibly, with a lack of control. "Are you ready for this?" His eyes watered. For the first time, Dante Ferraz was not the man in charge of everything. It was just someone trying not to lose what they didn't know how to keep. She brought the baby closer to him, and at that moment, when he saw the little one wrap his finger around his tiny hand, Dante cried, "No hiding, without defending yourself." And Isabella understood. Loving didn't always mean coming back. Sometimes it was allowing presence without offering the body. Sometimes it was creating a new story, with the scars visible and the heart whole. She walked to the window with her son in her arms. The sun was rising over the horizon, warm, golden, serene. "You will be free, my love. And me too," he whispered to his son. "Alive. And finally, own yourself. Not all love is born to last. Some emerge to reveal who we really are when everything around us falls apart." Isabella didn't find a fairy tale, but she discovered within herself a woman that no one will negotiate, dominate, or shut up. Sometimes the greatest test of strength isn't resisting love, it's choosing yourself despite it. And now I ask you, if it were you in her place, would you have the courage to leave? Even though you loved it, leave your comment below. Your opinion may touch someone who needs to hear exactly that today. And if this story moved you, don't leave without watching the next one. A new gripping plot, even more intense, where love and overcoming will surprise you from start to finish. Click now on the final screen and indulge in another story that will take your breath away.